Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Hey.
Hello, Glenn.
Hi.
It's I wanted to call. I needed to call you.
Yeah.
Because it's
every now and then, Jared gets the urge.
Nah, because I'm surrounded by crazy people. So I it's good to hear somebody sane.
Well, I don't know if anybody can remain sane, but make an effort.
Yeah, because I'm just around people who just, I don't know, they don't have a clue and whatnot, and it's just,
Are you alone, or is Danny with you?
He should be coming on.
Yeah.
But as of now, it's just my. So, how are you?
Well, it's unheated, but the worst it's been is 6 below zero, and I survived that without a problem. So right now it's about 0.
How many layers of clothes are you wearing?
About 3.
And I guess it gets uncomfortable moving around, right?
Well, it's a different lifestyle having a house that's lit, that when you're looking for something, you just kind of turn around and look. But when you have lighting which is focused in one place because it's battery operated, whatever, you keep losing stuff, and you can't see it. So you have to accept the fact that certain things that you look for, like your fork or your plate, whatever, all depend upon having the memory of where you laid it down last. There's nothing worse to memory than having to find something that you move many times a day. And then you have to think about, where was the last place I had this, That kind of stuff is
aggravating, right?
Is what is not fun.
Yeah, I deal with that sometimes. Like I was dealing with that this morning, looking for a hat that I knew I had. I saw it. I held it in my hand.
Yeah.
Right before.
Well, here I have the added predicament of cats. So you lay your gloves down in a place you know you're going to pick them up on the way out. And you get there and they're not there. And you say, did I take them off someplace else?
So
and then you have to wait until you find a flashlight in the dark, or wait for the next day until there's sunshine outside and it lights the room a bit. I found my toque underneath the old wood stove that we used to use.
So in a way, you're like in the past you're like a caveman. That's probably how you lived, right?
Exactly. The closest semblance is a cave where your lighting is artificially placed in one or two places, and you can walk without tripping over certain things on the way to have a pee or something. You know.
Yeah.
But it's I guess it's inbred in me that at one time I lived in a cave, and that's somewhat helpful. You plan during the daylight time, and you hope that the cats won't screw it up too much.
So, like, I'm sure you've bumped into many things, but now you have a sense.
Yeah. Same sense as I acquired walking around the farm at night. Even though it was dark, I knew approximately where I was and what I should be doing, and feeling both sides, walking down a path.
So,
the Premier has been sent a letter by Jennifer asking for her to look into the matter. Mind you, even though it was sent by email to her office, it took an extra week or so before it got to her. So bureaucrats had to, I guess, read it and distribute the knowledge all over the place. And one of the things that I've said is that even if hydro wanted to reintroduce hydro into the house, I'm not going to accept any change to the status quo until they visit the problem, the larger problem of the reason why their dumb reader, or what do they call them? The gadget that's supposed to read your usage.
Oh, the
smart,
some type of meter.
Smart meter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not smart at all. How a smart meter can be affected by electromagnetism, and how magnetic clouds can be created in positions that cause health problems. All of that stuff has to be revisited at the same time. Otherwise, turning on the power is only shortening the lifetime of the people that live here.
So either way, it's a lose-lose.
Yeah. I saw a hydro truck a few days ago stop across the street at the pole and took out a gadget, extended it, stuck it up the pole, and did something at the top, and then brought the gadget and folded it back in, put it in his truck, and he drove away. I told Jennifer I don't know what he did because it hasn't affected me, and even if he had turned on power, I've shut off the electricity coming into the house so that I would never be surprised by hydro being turned on and something happened. And I'm not going to turn it on, so I don't know what he did. Probably they're afraid that I'll freeze to death. They'll find my body and get blamed for it or something.
Well,
They certainly wouldn't do it for me. They would do it
for them,
for themselves. And the fraud of the billing practices they have is not simply an increase in rates, as the premier seems to believe, even though they've taken us on a tour of 100% increase in about 4 years. Cost of hydro made us from one of the cheapest to one of the most expensive. But it's the electromagnetism that's the problem with these smart meters. The last bill I got is, $17,000, which is nuts. It was $13,000 at the beginning of this year, $17,000 now, even though they shut off the power in April.
And what's the normal?
Well, for what I use, I should be paying something in the vicinity of $150 a month.
Mm-hmm. So that makes that about what, like?
And with their increases in prices, maybe $250 or thereabouts, but hasn't happened.
That's about almost like 1,800 to 2,000 a year.
Yeah.
And they just raise it to 7,000. And how many months?
Well, from 13,000 to 17,000 and some in January, February, March, and April. 4 months.
And they don't. I guess they don't have. There's no system set up where people can watch these irregularities and be smart. Right? There's no system. There's no people. There's no internal. You know how they have in the police department. Supposedly they have internal affairs where they investigate. They don't have, and they could just arbitrarily raise a price.
That's the biggest problem at hydro. You see, there was no hydro until the people of Ontario decided to allow the government to tax them in a certain way that would create hydro and the dams at James Bay and all of that kind of stuff. And they did that on the promise that since the government owns the project, there would always be access to the cheapest electricity possible. Well, as soon as they got it built and charging what the cost of building the dams and stuff was completed, they transferred ownership out of the government to an agency called Ontario Hydro. And then they said they had no control over pricing. And Ontario Hydro began, to live the good life by, spending all kinds of money, investing in other countries and all kinds of things that they put on the bill as outstanding debt. And then a couple of years ago, they decided that they would sell hydro to the private sector. And the private sector wasn't satisfied with the cost of hydro and the profits they were going to make. So they began 100% increase again, over and above all the expenses and everything that they had spent without permission from anybody, and the added costs that they had up to that time. They doubled it again, and now it's at the highest price. Province of Quebec, like when you're in Ottawa, you went to the museum across the bridge. Province of Quebec in Hull is paying, the people are paying half the price of the people in Ottawa for electricity. So Ontario Hydro is now buying hydro from Quebec, while they have a surplus here that they sell to the U.S.
So they make profits of what they sell to the of that surplus.
Yeah. I mean, it's ludicrous. You know, you build something so that you'll have it at the lowest cost possible, and then the government acts as if they own it privately rather than the people of Ontario. They don't ask permission. They just do things. Now, for the first time, a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago or so, the Premier accepted the blame for not watching over the cost of hydro. Now, she's the same Premier who, when she was a minister in the former Premier's cabinet, canceled 2 hydro projects, she said, because they weren't needed. And because those were already under construction, it cost the people of Ontario $2 billion. Now, she knows things that other people don't know. She knows that there's going to be a flood created by Lake Superior, and that these 2 hydro projects would be underwater and therefore of absolutely no use. But that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with all the time here. They want to make available properties in Ontario that have been seized from people who haven't paid the exorbitant bills because they can't afford it, so that they can sell these properties to the people of the New York State area who will be sending people north when the flood comes. They've expanded the real estate of the city of Ottawa by about double, taking up all rural communities in the neighborhood.
Really are preparing for.
Yeah.
But unless you know that piece of information, you're blind to it. You're blind to why they do the things they do. Why?
And the media won't report it because they're behind it. You know, the media is the manager of religion and politics. They sit in the middle and tell the people they're on their side. Bullshit. They're not on their side. They're on their boss's side.
And by media,
Not just press.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to clear up.
Yeah, not just press. Universities are media. Lawyers are media. Everything that is not working to produce a physical product which will be used or consumed by the people is basically a media. They're in between. Their name comes from Medi. Medi was a country in the middle of that area around Afghanistan, Iran. And Medi in the code, A and E are interchangeable, A and I are interchangeable, and therefore scramble the letters of the word Adam. Adam is the beginning 4,000 years ago of a project that leads to 2000 AD. So 6,000 years ago, media, Medi, Adam, Medi, started a project that would last 6,000 years, and then they would destroy all of the gene pools they had fabricated, as they're doing in Syria right now. I mean, there's no other explanation to the bombing they're doing in Syria except they're trying to get rid of the evidence of genetically, socially, and magnetically engineering preborn children. And that's why religion is on the side of no abortion, because they're manufactured children that they manufactured for a purpose, a gene pool that can be used as border security, for example, or as policemen. So bomb Aleppo, because in the old days it was called Hurry, and it's where Akhenaten and Nefertiti came to Egypt from. Akhenaten having been sent there as a baby because he had a deformity, and the genetic engineers, I and Tai, brother and sister, ended up being queen and emperor of Egypt at the stage just before the military took over. I was the pharaoh that succeeded. What's his name? Tutankhamun. The young kid. Yeah, Tutankhamun. King Tut. He was the grandfather and genetic engineer of Tutankhamun. The whole story of Akhenaten and Nefertiti is one in which they arrive out of Syria to take over when their father dies. And they take over and create a new religion called Aten out of the religion called Amen. What they want to do is get the information on genetic engineering, social engineering, and magnetic engineering away from the Amen priests. They then transfer all the knowledge while they are the royal family of Egypt into the monasteries run by Aten. And then, for a period of time, probably 4 years or that much about, Nefertiti disappears from Egypt. That's because she's taking all of the knowledge away from Egypt that has been transferred from the Amen monastery to the Aten monastery and taking it to a place called Hurry, which today is the place being bombed called Aleppo. And then they start making people, a genetically engineered batch of people to create a country called Israel. And then they distribute the people of Israel through war first, capture second, and eviction third. But these people are all genetically engineered to do the job they're going to be doing on behalf of the engineers when they arrive in the countries that they settle in, most of which would have been Central Europe, Germany, the main place. And from there, they genetically engineer people for transfer to other places. Everything started in Africa in genetic engineering at Mount Meru. Coded word for Mary, Meru.
Well, it's kind of in the word maroon, in a way.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the poppy that we get, I don't know if you get them in the U.S. there, but on Remembrance Day, November the 11th, by misleading people into thinking that what they're saying, lest we forget or remember First World War, Second World War, and other wars, that's bull. It's what the people in charge want to remember is how this whole process began, and they did it by making a poppy. A black dot of material represents Africa. It's surrounded by a red flower called poppy. And in the middle of the black and red is a pin made of chrome that goes in and then turns 90 degrees so that you can pin it on your clothes. But in fact, what it's saying is control going to Rome. Chrome, Rome. Number 2 is number 1. So there you go. Control over genetic engineering is in the hands of the people who ran harems in kingdoms, and those harems are really genetic engineering laboratories. The royal family believing that they were direct descendants don't understand that the only thing they're descendant of for certain is the recipe at the genetic engineering lab. And the harem was the way they began it. And now in New York City, it's called Harlem. Why do you think Bill, the President of the United States, put his office in Harlem? Because he knows. The Clintons know. Trumps know. And they're run by the same people.
No,
Occasionally, they need to change the direction of the country. So they tell their policemen, their enforcers at all levels, these people that we put in for generation after generation after generation through genetic engineering, their shelf life must expire. You must get rid of them because we have a new plan that requires genetic engineering as well, but in a different direction, taking the people who are now our servants, civil servants, have to be removed in order that this new batch can fit in. And we're building that batch, 12 million of them today, and call them refugees. They don't know they're the batch. They just think that war, pestilence, famine, or disease forced them to get away from their own country before the bombing started. Or they'll survive the bombing and then be sent, like Germans have been sent to Canada and the U.S.
I hear with the refugees, I heard countries are just, a lot of countries they're not taking.
Yeah. Well, some of the people in charge know. And they don't want to have their post abolished because their civil servants are of the wrong gene pool for the coming aspect of space travel. Hungary is one of the places that knows the most.
Why?
Religion. Catholic religion survives much more in Hungary and Poland than anywhere else in Europe. Everybody was becoming Protestant. So they knew the big picture because Rome is their headquarters.
Yeah. And I heard something in France. I had a family member telling me something.
France was half of Germany. And it was split in two with a river running down the middle. And one side was told, you're going to be the workers. And the other side was told, you're going to be the tourism headquarters of the world in a capital called Paris. Not an accident that its paw attached to the IRS. So everybody wants to visit Paris. But everybody knows that the best engineering is in Berlin.
Yeah.
Not because they are better engineers, but because they are fed information at the right moment, at the right time, because they're the right gene pool. And when their market life expires and the shelf has to be cleaned off, you get World War I, World War II, and you bomb the hell out of them. Now, the product of someone who survived bombing, the individuals who survived that type of bombing, have an inbred fear of the government and the police. So you send them off as refugees into the countries where you want people who are going to tell their neighbors, no, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Don't say anything bad about the government. Don't say anything bad about the police. And a lot of people over time get fed up because especially the rural people who are away from the big centers of population have time to think. And when they have time to think, they say, how come we're always ruled after elections by a bunch of people who live on the waterfront, on the Atlantic side, on the Pacific side, on the Gulf Coast? Why do those people always rule us? And why is it that there's a couple of states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan who always seem to vote for the winner without understanding that Pittsburgh is the center of policing in the United States? And you saw it at 9/11. The investigation into 9/11 was not done by anybody in New York. It was done by people in Pennsylvania from Pittsburgh. Ohio is the center of Jesuit religion control. Michigan, of course, is the place where the Lou at the Sioux is about to happen. So the states just beside them are the ones with the most refugees. And the bankruptcy of the state means people are very careful about what they say against the government of Michigan and the city of Detroit.
Wow, interesting how they can manipulate things based off of a genome.
You take genome and you make two groups, and you give them each 45% of the vote. And then you have a group of people you control totally who have 5 to 10% of the votes. So you're always going to win. How can you lose? You can switch your 5% from one side to the other when you want. And that team will win. If you look at the votes, the popular vote, Clinton got 2 million more votes than Trump. But they're all in the same places, California, New York. That's where most of the votes were. So you can only vote for so many people in New York to go to Parliament, go to government, Congress, you call it. And same thing in California. So even if you have 20 million more votes in those states, it doesn't matter. You won the state anyways with 20 million less. So by controlling Pennsylvania and Ohio, Michigan, and sometimes Illinois around Chicago, that you control. That's what Trump got.
I remember years ago, we were in a conversation. You had a scenario where they would get people like Trump and guys like this.
Hang on a second. I'll be back.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that, Gert. But I live in a magnetic field, and I drink water that contains iron. And whenever they turn up the magnetism, I gotta pee.
I live like that too, kind of. I'm on the road and I have to driving all the time, and I have to use the
I only have a minute or so when it happens that I gotta get to the bathroom or I can't hold it. And that happens 25, 30 times a day. Sorry, you were saying.
I was in my what was I saying? We were talking about something, and I hate that.
I know.
Oh yeah, when, a scenario you had like years ago. You had like a scenario where people like Trump, people like Ted Turner, these guys like this that they wouldn't need in this new system because they're going into space travel, and those people would be useless.
Nah.
They would like bring them to a Trump-owned building, and they would go on the ground under a lake, I think Lake Superior, in a tunnel under Lake Superior, and they'd be left there to die.
Well, there are two groups of people. The ones they want to survive would come out on the other side. So you go to a building like a Trump building, and you go to the basement, you get on a train, and you go to Oswego, New York, and Oswego into the tunnel under Lake Ontario and out around Kingston, Ontario, Royal Military College, and then you get distributed throughout Canada. But if you're not the type of person that they want to have in the next group of genetically engineered people who've got a different mission, and you've been helpful to them, and you've got a lot of power and stuff like that, then they put you in a separate train when everybody else has gone to the other side, and drive you under the lake and stop. Shut the gates at both ends and go back and clean up the mess later on.
That's the thing, like with this newly elected guy. It's like I don't see how he's useful to them.
Well, he's useful because of how he ran his election. And it was to destroy those people whose mentality was that anyone can become president as long as they're nice and do the right thing and whatever. Now they got to tell their children anybody can become president, even though they're not nice. They're not the type of people you'd want to live next door to, that kind of stuff. So it destroys the element in the children's group who would do things right in the future because they want to become important. Now they know that it doesn't really matter. Somebody funded Trump after he went bankrupt. On his own, he couldn't do it. He would never have done it. But somebody funded him and continued to fund him to bring him to a position where people would accept this multi-billionaire who has a lot of golf courses and big buildings and whatever in his name. And he would be told what to say. He would be told to say the things that piss off the people who live on the ocean side and the Gulf side of the country, leaving open the people in the middle, the farmers in the middle who feed the country. And that's what made the difference. The people, as one reporter said, I heard on the radio one day, the choice you have between Clinton and Trump is, how do you want to die? Poison or stabbed to death?
Yeah.
That's the choices.
Basically.
So they voted like robots, both teams.
Yep.
But the control mechanism was set up in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. The Jesuits ran the show. And people can't help but doing what they believe might be different, might be a solution. They are genetically engineered. We all are. And the only way that you could break out of being genetically engineered is to learn about the true path of history. Not ever taught in universities. They want to bring you high. That's why they call it higher education, where what you need to do is to go low, down below, and you'll understand what's going on. Took me 30 years.
Yeah, like that's what I know, like personally, I know I have to do, but I was like recently having a conversation with someone. They're like, "What are you doing if you think the world is so corrupt, the system is? What are you doing now? What's your action now?" I said, "How can I really make an action if I don't know who I am, what my program is?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be helping. I'd be I'd be harming."
You see, I was a guy at the age of 35, 40 who thought I knew. And then an event occurred, my loss of my MICOT project to Bell Canada through bribes in the Prime Minister's office. And I had to stop dead in my tracks and say, I've been preaching that this country is a democratic country ruled by law. And yet now I know that's not true. They control the voting structure. They only allow people to progress from the school board to the hospital board to the municipal board to the provincial board to the federal board, eliminating people along the way that don't do what they want done. I gotta find out what the truth is, and I'm not going to find out where I live because I'm at the center of activity. I gotta go and see and listen and talk to the people all the way across the country on all sides to see if I can pick up bits and pieces of evidence that once accumulated as a whole in one place will help me to make my decision. And I did that for the better part of 20 years. And then I arrived here at the farm saying, I got all of these little bits and pieces of evidence that direct me to thinking the unthinkable. What do I do with it? Because I don't understand what is the common denominator for all of these people and these activities that are going on. What's the common denominator? And then the cell shows up, whom I knew there was somebody getting in the way of everything I was doing all my life and directing my journey, but didn't know who they were. But then I found out, and of course you know, but too long a story. In any event, they gave me the clues that I could use to put together all the pieces of the puzzle and understand that where humans were before the Ice Age they had knowledge beyond what I had. And they had come to the conclusion that every planet has a fixed lifespan based upon the duration of the sun in their area, which is committing suicide by burning itself to death. And therefore, eventually, at some stage, they would have to be able to move if they wanted to survive as an intelligent species. And therefore, what could they do? Well, they had to gather all of the information from all of the people, and they found out that the information they needed was so vast that the number of people they had couldn't handle the problem. So they decided to use the Ice Age as a break from the past and create a genetically engineered population in a period after the Ice Age. Masons will tell you about 4,000 BC. The Ice Age ended at 8,000 BC for all intents and purposes. It never really ends. It just has no impact on the majority of places on the planet. So 4,000 years, from 8,000 to 4,000, they prepared. And then they set about on a plan based upon a concept of a Garden of Eden. And Adam would be the boss instead of the female who ran the show prior to the Ice Age. Female's the only one who could give birth at first, clone of herself as a hermaphrodite, and then a split in gender. But the male was a support structure, not the leader. And they had to have control mechanisms that could be used at a distance. Monarchs, missionaries, media.
MMM.
Yeah.
WWW.
The big W. Anyways, sorry, but I only have half an hour before it gets dark, and I got to go feed the animals.
Okay, Glenn. Try to remember where everything is before it turns.
Yeah. Bye for now. Say hi to everybody.
All right. I will.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.